Yuen Chen and Elias Dager have joined me in the studio to talk about music. So welcome to you both.
Thank you,
Thank you.
for having us.
I've listened to you both perform. Fantastic, great musicians, and still young musicians, so a lot more to come. Folks will hear a performance or part of a performance in just a bit, but I do want to kind of get to the beginnings for the both of you. And Yuen, we can talk a little bit about your background, and you're a cellist.
Yes. I was a violinist when I was very little.
Oh, okay.
From like 3 to 8, and I switched to cello. So music has been a friend of mine for my whole life. Yeah.
And you weren't born in the U.S.
I wasn't. China is my home. I was born in eastern part of China and grew up there until I was 16. I came here to further pursue music with my best friends. Yeah.
So you came here and you obviously continued your music studies. Talk about, and you changed from violin to cello, or did you change in China?
In China.
Okay.
When I was 8, I switched. I was complaining about standing for too long.
Oh, that's an interesting reason.
Silly reason.
Why, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll probably get to it in a bit, but you stuck with the string instrument.
Yes.
And you were able to sit and perform as opposed to stand. Elias, you were born in the States.
I was.
Tell me about your background. You were born not too far from Quincy.
No, I was born in Boston, and my family moved in different layers from Lebanon. So I'm actually 100% Lebanese. So my dad came when he was 23. My mom's dad came when he was 23. And my mom's parents came. I don't know if they were 23 or how old they were. But my mom's family ended up in Quincy. My dad ended up in Quincy, and they met at a Lebanese festival.
And was piano your first instrument?
My mom took me to, which still exists, this Mom and Me. It was all rhythm and singing and kids walking around in circles and dancing and stuff. So that was my first musical, I think, experience. But piano was, my first instrument.
And influences. So at a young age, maybe in China, and maybe some influences now, what made you decide to first play violin and then play cello?
I say it was mostly my parents' decision. They probably thought music or art is a great thing. Actually, none of my family members are professional musicians.
You're the first in your family.
I'm the first one. Yeah, and people there love classical music. They love Western classical music. So there's a big population of children of starting at a young age.
And I'd like to turn to something that you said about music. Music's power to connect people and bring healing. Talk about that.
I feel music has such power to bring people instantly to various worlds, different cultures and different emotions. Emotions are probably like what I love music the most about music is it expresses emotions that we all share as humans. And I feel just giving listeners this experience is especially important at our time where it's filled with struggles, difficulties. So
it's almost a universal language, right?
Absolutely,
music is a universal language. And equally, you say that music's power to tell stories and build community.
Yeah, I feel that's in line with what Yuen said, basically. Yeah, tell stories, tell emotional stories, but also for a long time I've been playing with singers. So there's lyrics, there's poetry, and those are more literal stories, but music without words, I think, also tells stories. And you get a rare chance to hear somebody's perspective very directly, whether it's a composer or an improviser, or somebody and even if the music isn't literally about something, it's about them in some way and about somewhere else. So it's like this rare access to some internal world that usually would be closed off to. So that's, I guess, what I mean by tell story.
Yeah. So I want to say with classical music, with chamber music, and you can both answer this, there's not a lot of room for, well, or maybe there's no room for improvisation, right? It's all pretty much written down pretty straight.
Yes.
But with that said, you can play with emotion. So maybe address that.
We think about this all the time. We compare classical music to like jazz
Right.
music, for example, which has a lot of room for improvisation. But I think we both have agreed that even though classical music so much written on the paper looks like fixed, but in the very instant, like there's so many different aspects that changes how you play music, like how we feel in the moment,
Right, how
right?
the room
How the energy in the room,
Yeah.
the energies from the audience that can totally change. So we can like have a fixed interpretation in our mind, but especially in chamber music, when you do collaborations, it so much depend on how my partners are feeling, and that changes how we play. So each time it's kind of a surprise.
Yeah,
Actually.
I totally agree. And I'll give the example of that concert with David. We have a friend who's a violinist, and I played with him this was just over a year ago in New York. And we had practiced this one movement of a Bach sonata for violin and piano and keyboard. It was never written for piano. It was written for harpsichord and violin. So already you're trying to maybe sound like a harpsichord, maybe sound like a piano. There's many choices. We practiced and we came to some good idea of basically how we would play it. And then for some reason in the concert, we played it completely differently than we had ever tried it. And that happens more frequently than you think, because the acoustics of the room, the feeling of that day, like, so it's good to actually practice in such a way that you can feel flexible in the moment.
Yeah, think it as you're improvising.
And
in a
as an
way
audience
that-
member,
yeah.
right, as an audience member, I like to hear what you both shared. An audience member does want that musician to put their own identity on a piece.
Right. Yeah, I actually also just heard from another friend that his friend has now been going to, like Boston Symphony does, 3 or so concerts of the same program. So she goes at least twice to see, like, oh, is that pianist going to play the same way these 2 days?
And probably finds that pianist does play differently.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. So I know we mentioned piano, that's your main instrument, but that's not your only instrument, correct?
Well, I was actually thinking on the way here I should have brought, yeah, I play this, I've been playing piano for much longer. This is a newer thing as of these 4 or 5 years, Imbira Zavadzimu,
Okay, which is?
which is I should have brought it.
I wish I had.
I know. Well, I encourage people to look it up. It's a instrument from Zimbabwe, from the Shona tradition, and there's many such lamellophones. They're called, which is a word for tongues, because they have all these metal, they look like tongues coming out, and it's a piece of wood, and you hold it and you play it with 3 fingers. This particular one. There's various from Zimbabwe area, but also from throughout Africa. There's lamellophones that you play with different amounts of fingers. But this one has a huge traditional repertoire. And that is another place where improv versus written out is another big question, because there's these traditional songs. Everybody might learn one lyric or one pattern to play, but no 2 players play it exactly the same.
So I'm going to ask, how did you approach that instrument? What
amazing
got you into
story.
that instrument, right?
Yeah, that was I think that, as my teacher told me, that was the spirits were guiding me to that. So it was a random, it's a long story, but it was a trip that my mom won from her friend who has a nonprofit organization, and she was raising money. So we won this safari in South Africa, and a travel agent said, why don't you go to Zimbabwe just for a couple of days? So we went just for a couple of days, and in those 2 days, I had remembered hearing the sound of Mbira at a radio station I used to work at, and I said, "Oh, Mbira is from here." So I asked this one tour guide, "Do you know any Mbira players?" And he said, "There's one big one right in this town." And that night they both came over. We met, and he gave me his Mbira for the night, taught me my first song. And he said that we were meant to meet
Right.
through the spirits. It's a very spiritual instrument. So Zavadzimu actually means of the ancestors. So when you play, you're calling the spirits of ancestor, and that is very related. I feel can be very related to our classical music, in which so many composers are referencing earlier composers. There's a lot of calling of spirits, I would say.
Let's talk about meeting, and I guess the meeting of the two of you. That happened right here in Boston, correct?
It did at New England Conservatory. We were both students there, but didn't know about the existence of each other until one day he needed a cellist for his piano lesson to play with, and you found me.
Yeah, at the last minute, I was supposed to play with another cellist, and my teacher. Well, the whole thing was my teacher said, "You need to play one more piece this semester." So I said, "All right." There's this Beethoven Variations for cello, and she suggested. Well, I already knew this other cellist, but he was gone for some tour or something. She said, "Well, you have to bring somebody else to your lesson," and she said, "I know a cellist with rare passion."
And
And
the rest is history.
The rest is history. So then I walked into the rehearsal, didn't know who she was. She didn't know who I was, but we both had small cups of Dunkin' Donuts coffee. So I said, "There's a connection."
Connected through Dunkin' Donuts. I like it. Connected through coffee. So I've listened to the two of you play together. And I want you to address, maybe you both can address, or one of you can address. You could probably agree that you could have two talented musicians that when they collaborate, they don't necessarily mesh. They don't necessarily, the energy might not be there. It's not the case with the two of you, but talk about, I guess, the importance of knowing and collaborating and knowing when it sounds right. Is that a challenge?
I'd say even if you like overall have a great feeling working with each other, there's still moments of challenges where you feel differently about music. We have to work on that. Yeah, a lot of the time to meet somewhere where we're both happy. I feel this is maybe tied to like the improvisation topic we just talked about. Having an attitude of like openness,
Right.
and because there's such a depth of how well you listen. So like keeping the ears open and really listen to what the other person is doing, and somehow that will change how you approach music.
And almost
And
maybe
also-
work off the energy of the other person?
Completely. Like now, like we're talking now.
Right.
And yeah.
So, okay, so it applied to speech as well as music.
Yeah,
I
and that's
suppose.
actually
Like
exactly
talking. Yeah.
what I felt to compare it to just any relation, like non-musical. Sometimes you can easily connect with somebody's energy and just talk, and sometimes there's blockages, or one person is waiting to, like, I'm just gonna wait till you like finish saying what you're saying so I can say what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
So it's the openness thing is that yeah.
openness.
And
yeah.
we're separate individuals, like separate universes. So you know, you never know what is on each other's mind, and I don't know. It's like it's very fascinating, and it's also vulnerable in a way. Like
So you have to be. Yeah, you have to be vulnerable to a certain degree to be able to
Yes.
to meet that other person,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes it happens pretty seamlessly.
And those are the best.
Those are the best. Sometimes it doesn't, and then you have to try even more to.
You work at it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about influences. Maybe past influences, maybe current influences. Cellists.
I always say Yo-Yo Ma. And my teachers, but yeah, Yo-Yo Ma is just who has such big heart and connects people, connects different fields, bring peace. I hope I can, be like him.
I think you should be happy, certainly the way your performances are sounding to folks that, like me, who didn't know of your artistry until now.
There's many, and in my mind, they're kind of in the category of direct and like people who I've never met. So in terms of direct influences, I always feel I have to put them in my bios and stuff because that's the main thing. I mean, they're so important. They're like the most important, especially, young, when I was young. People like Jeffrey Goldberg, he was actually an improvisation teacher at New England Conservatory Prep School. And he's also a pianist of written music, classical music, but we used to go into his class and he would put a painting on the keyboard music desk and say, "That's your score today." So that was a huge influence in playing even written music, to take it with a more, that's where the spirit thing comes in again. It's spiritual, not just some objective written out thing. But all my teachers.
So they live in us.
I hear a lot, when I ask that question to a lot of performers, they will reference their teachers as a big influence, throughout their careers.
Yeah, and it can become even more like when you haven't studied with them for so long, because you see what filters through over the years.
You realize it later on.
Right.
Yeah. And they never left. They're somewhere.
It must be kind of fun to develop a set list for a performance.
I always say, like, some pieces can resonate with each other by being similar or by being very different. So it's almost as though, like, does this piece talk to that piece in a concert? And I guess with food, does this dish talk to that dish? Or like,
does it complement that dish?
Complement it.
Yeah.
To a person out there that's watching that might like to get into music, I assume you both would encourage anyone who feels like they could express themselves through music to give it a try?
Definitely. Yeah.
Definitely.
So many people sing so well. Like the other day with our friend an old friend of mine who I've never heard sing, was telling me, I was singing in the shower. I used to play at a church. And he said, it's one of the songs from the church that he always loved. And I said, I'd love to hear you sing it. Maybe we can play it together. And he may have been, in the moment, a little shy about it. But that night he recorded something on his phone and sent it, and it sounded so good. And I thought, wow, music is in every... This morning my mom called me and sang to me over the phone. Nature Boy.
Everybody is an artist or has an artist in them. And music, I think, it shapes how you see the world. It's a precious thing. It's a great thing.
Well, on that note, well said. Well said. And on that note, I want to thank you both for coming in and chatting with me. Folks will get to hear the two of you perform now. We'll go to that in just a second. But again, thank you so much. It was enjoyable, certainly, to listen to you prior to the interview and now to chat.
Thank you for having us here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank